All right, let's talk about theater in the East. Let's enable editing just because I'm tired of that. Well, I also need to be able to do that because we're going to watch some videos too. Very short videos. So theater in the East. Asia contains dozens of countries, thousands of languages, and 3/5 of the world's population. So other than Asia, that's only 2/5 of the world's population. Okay, so most of the people in the world actually live in Asia. There was a movie one time called Dave with Eddie Murphy, and he's an alien, and he's talking to other people, little computer people or whatever, and he's asking them, they say, "What's your name?" And he's like, "Give me the most common name, on this planet." And it's like, Ming Chow, or whatever, and it's Eddie Murphy. And the lady says, "Funny, you look more like a Dave." And he's like, "Yes, that's it. Dave Ming Chow," whatever. So I think about that. The most popular names on the planet are Asian names, and it's not stuff that we're, that used to. Okay, there are thousands of identified theatrical forms of Asia. We are looking at a minute amount of the theater that's out there because each of those different countries have different things that develop, and China is enormous. Okay, so there are probably many more forms that we don't know about, or that we just don't have that documentation written in our textbook because there's just too many to cover. So one of the things about Eastern theater that's different is it's almost never just spoken. Like a lot of times it's sung or it's chanted or it's danced. A lot of it looks more like a musical or even like an opera. In the case of Peking opera, it is an opera. It's all sung. Sometimes they mime things. Sometimes one person, a narrator, will do the talking and other people act things out. And it's usually very presentational, okay? We are facing the audience. We almost never turn away. If we do, the enactment, again, it's all very stylized. And people usually, in most of these countries, start preparing to be a performer when they are children. Okay, we say now, well, kids learn the violin at, age 7 or 8, and then they become, perfect violinists. These kids start at like 3 or 4. Okay, so they usually, like, there's a family that does this, and so they raise their kids to do it as well. And sometimes it's exclusively families and nobody else can get in and do it. So it's really interesting. The dramatic language is very rhythmic and it's very melodic. So certainly different than realism that we would go to and see a play here. Eastern theater is usually more visual and sensual than literary or intellectual. So it's more like you hear it, you experience it, you feel the emotions of what's going on. Most of the stories that they talk about are, they're all stories that they already know. So we do this too. Again, I've used the example several times of Batman, right? We know the story of Batman, but we will go and see a Batman show because, well, we want to see what happens this time. We want to see what this take is. Who's going to play the Joker? Okay, so they really kind of know the stories, and the Eastern theater is more about what's the presentation like? What is it about? Not necessarily the story. They have a strong emphasis on story, but it's not tightly plotted. So a lot of times, this reminds me of the Commedia dell'arte, which I reference a lot, but they don't have, really big plots. Again, these people know the beginning, middle, and end of the stories that they're hearing. It's like going to see Little Red Riding Hood or Cinderella, right? Cinderella was just here at the Majestic not that long ago. How do they show us the story of Cinderella? What songs and dances do they use? How is it presented? And how about this actor or that actor? Eastern theater is broadly stylized. There is no realism. So none of it's realism. And Eastern actors train in intense apprentice systems beginning in early childhood. Okay, and Eastern theater is also very deeply traditional. The stories that they tell, most of them are, again, based on stories that they know, or myths, or tradition that they've experienced. Okay, now I need to go. not just, we don't make this easy to do. This is Sanskrit drama. He forgot his line. Notice they're barefoot. I'm not going to make you watch 4 minutes of that. Okay. I'm like, that's very interesting theater to me. And these are stock characters, and the people in the audience know who they are by the way that they're dressed. And obviously, it's very presentational. And you know that this person, whoever, he does this and he does this, and then there's the one that does this and does this. It's like, okay, somebody's telling somebody what to do and somebody's explaining why they didn't do it or something. I wish they had subtitles and we knew what was going on, but it doesn't. So, but this is what Sanskrit drama looks like. So people go and they see this kind of theater that is the storytelling. Oh, by the way, another good source is going to be your crash course. So go to crash course on whatever your genre is, and it will show. It'll give you. You can use that as a source. It can give you some good information. Okay, so the Sanskrit drama, this Eastern drama began in India as Sanskrit plays, and they survive from about AD 100. Not just Sastra, which is the treatise on theater that I was talking to you about that was like Aristotle's Poetics. They're not sure. It dates somewhere between 200 BC to 200 AD. So there's like 400 years there. Who here does not know what BC means? Who here knows what BC means? Because some people don't raise their hand at all, okay? This was a question in the last class, and I didn't realize that some people just didn't know. BC is before Christ, and AD means Anno Domini, which is basically after death. So I always thought it was really interesting because BC is before Christ was born, and AD is after Christ died. So then there's 33 years in there that we don't have accounted for. So it's like, whoa, okay, how do you say that? So maybe it's like 433 years there. And I'm not sure the way that this is worded is that if someone wrote it and then added onto it and then added onto it and added onto it for 400 years, or somebody wrote it and we're not sure when they wrote it, somewhere between those 400 years. But basically, this is way more detailed than what Aristotle did. And it's a whole book about how you should do theater, what should be done, how the actors should act, how they should train, what kind of costumes they should wear, what kind of theater you should have, what kind of audience, should be present, and all that sort of thing. So the Natya Sastra is really important because they still use it today. They still look at it when they're doing theater. So Sanskrit theater was performed indoors with roofed buildings. That's a big deal. Does anybody remember when we had the first indoor theater in the Western theater? In like 1700s, yeah. It was during the Renaissance time. So this theater was performed inside, okay, with roof buildings, probably with a lot of candles back then. The Sanskrit theater really died out around the 10th century. So that's about 900, okay, about the year 900 that we would say right now. But people still do it today. Obviously, from that video, people are reenacting it. Kind of like how great theater died out. We can still do it today. People still put on Oedipus Rex all the time. Okay, this is the. I realized I didn't assign anybody some of these things because we just didn't have enough, and I forgot about them. The Kathakali. Okay. This one is really interesting also because I want you to look at the makeup. These are not masks. This is actual makeup. Somebody else was talking while they acted out. That is attached to their face. So again, really interesting. Different kinds of, oh, that's interesting. Different kinds of, I said it's almost like Indian Sign Language or something that they do, but they mime about, but somebody had just sung it and sung what it was that they were going to do. So the word Kathakali actually means story play. So it's a play that's enacting out a story. And it's based on the stories in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Okay, and these are two very well-known pieces of storytelling. It's kind of like how we would say the stories in the Ramayana, like the stories in Grimm's fairy tales. Okay, or who's the other one that read all the fairy tales? I can't even remember. Grimm's fairy tales are the ones that are really grim. People die in those, you know. So we eat children and, you know, whatever, cut out the wolf from the inside of their stomach, whatever, you know, wear them as a cape, that kind of thing. I can't remember. Oh, Hans Christian Andersen wrote like The Emperor's New Clothes and Little Mermaid and things like that. Okay, in the Kathakali, the text is sung as the actors dance and pantomime dramatic action. It's highly stylized costumes and makeup convey the characterization. So you saw the guy with the big thing on his face and the great big outfit and stuff, and people look at that and they know who that is. Okay, this is the Chinese. There we go, Chinese Ziyu, which means tuneful theater or Chinese opera. And this is the very first one. What am I doing? I want to copy it and not paste it. Even when they're not singing, they're singing. together. Okay, so fun stuff for everyone. All right, so so the Xingu in China, by the way, you know, we measure time AD and BC. They measure time from whatever dynasty was in power at the time. Okay, so the first well-defined Chinese opera form, Zaju, appeared in China during the Song dynasty in the 10th century. As Westerners, we had to add on in the 10th century, around 900 AD. So it makes sense to us. But in China, if they say during the Song dynasty, everybody understands when that is. Okay, at the end of the Ming dynasty, which is around 1644 or so, a little bit around the time of our Renaissance, about the Italian Renaissance, the Zaju had been succeeded by the Kungfu. It's a different form. Then there was a more popular clapper opera that we'll see a little bit here, that drumsticks were beaten against wooden blocks. Okay, and so instead of just having all the ting ting, they had kind of, you know, just a lot of kind of things. And the most famous one today is the Peking opera, and that's the one that it's also called Beijing opera because the opera is named for the city that it was created in. So that's why the different kinds of opera are named the different things. They're named after the cities that they were created in. And because all the stories are really well known, the drama focuses on the performer's skills. So they go there to see that lady perform, okay, that singer perform, or, you know, somebody special. So again, people will go to see an opera. Maybe it's an opera they've seen before. Maybe it's a show they've seen before. They want to see how this one does it. I will tell you that I've seen Phantom of the Opera 3 or 4 times now, probably 4 times. Okay, and every time it's like, oh, who's playing the Phantom? Okay, who's going to be the singer? Who is it that you're looking? And they all do it a little different. So that's what they do there with the Chinese opera. Okay, on the Japanese No theater. And again, this is written N-O and also N-O-H. This was close. Notice that this stage, this is a very special kind of the stage that they use. And notice that the socks, they're kind of like they have a split between the toes. Not like thong, but like in the middle of the toes. It's very interesting. It looks like this is supposed to be like a battle. Ernesto, wait. And he is defeated. This one's kind of funny. This is a man tied to a pole. Okay, so no theater. No is Japan's most revered and cerebral theater, meaning that a lot of it has to do, the jokes and all of the things that happened are very intellectual. Okay, it's not like that just had a little bit of comedy in it. It's not so much comedy. It's more thought-provoking theater. And it's highly ceremonial and almost always portrays some supernatural events and characters, some gods, some mythical beings coming down and, doing something here on earth. The no stage is precisely measured and dictated by tradition. Okay, notice that it has this walkway on the side and this thing that comes out front and that tree that's painted on the background. All of that is very precise, and every time you go to no theater, it's going to look like that. The roof on the inside of the building, okay, all of that is very specific. The plotting is weak, even in comparison to other Asian drama. Okay, so there's not a lot of big plot, not a lot of twists and everything. Again, it's more representational. And it's done today for enthusiasts rather than the general public. It's people who really still love that kind of theater and want to see it again. They do it. It's very kind of specialized. But that's not really the theater that most people in Japan go to. Kabuki is. Come on. Kabuki, is this the one that, I think this link might not work, but I have another one. Okay. All right. How much wider the stage is. Common theater. These are the wigs. Notice the man behind him. You're not supposed to see him. They just freeze there so everybody knows who they are. Look how thick this makeup is. theater, but just one. Okay, so again, kabuki was created about 200 years after the No theater, and it's a much more popular form of Japanese theater. You can see how the No theater has these very precise measurements to the stage and the number of musicians that they have and the way that they do things. And kabuki is a little more loose and bigger stage and more people can see it. It's kind of gaudy and exhilarating, and it's designed to appeal to commoners. Kabuki, the word translates to askew. So a little bit off center, you know, just a little bit twisted. The major works fall into the Jida Imono, history plays, or the Soamano, domestic plays. So they're either, you know, about historical battles like they were showing, or they're about affairs of the heart and, you know, things that happen in households and lovers getting together and husbands and wives fighting, you know, stuff like that. The most famous kabuki actor and bunraku puppet playwright was Chikamatsu Monzamon from 1653 to 1725. However, I told you, Okani, can't remember the last name, had it on the other sheet, is the person that started kabuki theater, and she was a woman, and she was a singer and a dancer and a playwright and a songwriter, and she started it in a dry riverbed and had people come. And for the longest time, both men and women performed this theater. Well, then somebody got the idea that women shouldn't be in theater because it meant that one of the women was a prostitute or something like that. So all women who were in theater were prostitutes. Theater has gotten this rap for many years, you know. The lowest people in the totem pole are prostitutes and actors. So, all of a sudden they outlawed women. So women were not allowed to do it anymore. Now I think some of them are starting to be allowed to back into it again, but traditionally it's still, there's a lot of men, and there are specific men that play the females' roles. Kind of like in England when we talked about Shakespeare's time, there were men that was their job, they played female roles. So, and it was usually young men because they had higher voices. And all Eastern theater traditions have influenced modern theater, both in the East and the West. So now that we know about all these different things, a lot of that influence has come into the way that we do modern theater. So playwrights and directors and things, a lot of times they have a lot of that influence. Ta-da, that's the end of that one. However, dun, dun, dun. This is the publishers. And I want to make sure that we cover anything that's going to be on your quizzes and your tests. Okay. Because they changed the chapter, again, some of that stuff was old. Let me skim some of this. They talk about the past and the history and tradition. So a history is a representation of the past. And they say that history is written by the victors. That means whoever won the war gets to write the history and say what the battle was about. So by definition, history can only be partial. In other words, we don't know everything that really happened, but we can only kind of surmise from what we know. So no text could ever really create, you know, the aspect of being in an earlier time, because there's no way that that can be described. So when we're talking about history and tradition and theater, we're talking about, in theater, the tradition is not the same as the past, but it's a present carrying out of recalling something that happened a long time ago. Is that like too much for your brain? Does that make your brain cry? we're not doing the past, right? But we're kind of reflecting on what was done, or what we think was done in the past. And societies, we invent traditions because we want to preserve our past, or we want to preserve the way that things are. I'll give you an example. Dia de los Muertos. When I was growing up here in San Antonio, it was not a thing. It's my birthday, by the way. November 2nd is my birthday. And in the Catholic Church, it is All Souls Day. The day before that is All Saints Day. And I went to Catholic school, so at All Saints Day, they gave us a holiday because that was a church holiday. And All Souls Day, my mom said that she got a holiday when she was young, but they stopped doing that. But we talk about all the souls. But I moved away and I went to California for a while. And during the time I went to California, Dia de los Muertos was revived and brought to San Antonio more than it was before. I mean, it was always kind of celebrated, but the way that we celebrate it now, where I know students that they remember, everything in their lives, they remember going to the cemeteries and bringing food and bringing the, it's not carnations, is it carnations? No, marigolds, she was doing marigolds. I remember this, I had to have my kid do a project. The marigolds, those are the flowers for the Dia de los Muertos. I can really say it. But that's something that we invented and strengthened because we want this to continue. We want people to not forget. That's why we have, all sorts of traditions. Okay, oh wait, did I miss something? Okay, this is important. The Cambridge School Theory. So it was derived early anthropology, especially James Fraser. This is one of the theories of how did theater start? Where did it really start? Because for the West, we were saying it started in Greece in the 5th century BCE. But this particular person, James Fraser, did some research on it. And the Cambridge School of Thought is that he came up with a book called The Golden Bough. And it was an attempt to derive archetypes from all the world's religions and mythologies. So basically, he's saying that theater came out of religion and that all religions have similarities in that they enact things to help their congregation understand. So the shamanism especially, they would reenact things, even if it's like acting out what this deity or that deity did or said. Even in the ancient Greece, right, the festival was to the god Dionysus, and they had plays that had to do with what the gods, how they came down and interacted with people. So, and in different societies, in Native American societies, there were, chiefs and, shamans and people that would enact out, embody the idea of the wolf, right? And kind of role play what that is. So a shaman is a person with a special relationship with the deity, with the spiritual world and the invisible world. And they have been employed to cure the sick, aid the hunter, conjure the rain, help the crops grow, like forever. There's always been this kind of a person in all these different societies. And in many of these shamanistic practices, the shaman performs it in a state of a trance. If you go to Jamaica, which I did on my honeymoon, it is legal there to smoke marijuana in church. Okay, they have a church that's how they get in touch with their spiritual selves. Okay, so it goes to a level of consciousness beyond your body awareness, and then they embody whatever that deity is. There's sometimes ecstatic dancing and rapturous chanting, and that's kind of the primary features of them, usually climaxing in a violent shaking kind of thing. And sometimes acrobatic feats, so that, come and do a backflips or whatever, but the shamans, so we believe that, theater kind of came out of these religious practices. They have costumes and body paint and headdressers. If you look in your book, one of the photos that's in there shows a shaman, I believe in Africa, and the mask is almost the size of the person. So these giant masks and costumes and headdresses to help them know that this is a spiritual presence. Some shamanistic rituals incorporate dialogue as well as impersonation. So sometimes there's people talking, and we are reenacting some of the gods. Okay, this is not theater. It's meant to be spiritual, but there's still some reenactment going on. In sub-Saharan Africa, one can still see today a vast variety of traditional performances in which ritual and storytelling continuously interweave. A lot of them have a lot of traditions of dance dramas. Okay, and in shamanistic performances, the theater magic of substitution is employed that gives material form to the invisible world. Okay, so certainly this is the invisible world. I am capturing the deity inside me to show you what it is that they're doing. Is it there? Hold on a second. All right. I got lost. All right. So passion plays. We talk about passion plays, and in the church, the Christian church, when we refer to a passion play, we're referring to the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It specifically refers to when they crucified him, when they arrested him, and this is reenacted even now downtown San Antonio, usually at Easter time or right before Easter. This past year, I actually got to do the makeup on the Jesus. Did I mention this in class before? I did the makeup on the Jesus that they processed downtown. He's carrying the cross downtown, and they crucified him in front of San Fernando Cathedral. I always tell people, for makeup, if you need glamour makeup, you probably want to talk to somebody else, but if you want a bloody Jesus, I'm your girl. I can bloody up Jesus. Big gouges, look like they just, I think I need to use more blood. It didn't show as much on when I saw it on the newsreel. I was like, nah, he needs to be bloody. So, but they reenact it as a show of faith, right? It's done as a show of faith. So there are other passion plays that exist. One of them is the Oberammergau Passion Play, and it was founded in 1634 by a German town called Oberammergau. I don't speak German. I'm not sure how to say it, but it was a collective vow of gratitude for the end of the plague that was happening to them at the time. This is in 1634, and it's still being produced today, and it's the only medieval play that's still performed in its cyclical community context for 400 years now. So they have still done this play every year for 400 years. And it takes about 2,000 people to do the play. So for the actors, musicians, and technicians to create the 5 to 7 hour long 16-act performance. That's a long play. And after decades of activism, the play's script was rewritten in time for the 1990 production, and a lot of changes were made. Hopefully they made it a little shorter, but they included new music, and now married women and women over the age of 35 were allowed to participate. I guess they figure after 35, you're not going to distract anybody from the play because you're an old maid. I don't know. I don't know. You're never getting married. I don't know. They didn't, but single women under the age of 35 are still not allowed to perform in whatever this is. And actually then the first Muslim participants were able to join the cast. And then, okay, so for many theater historians, the ceremonial rite in Egypt called the Abydos Passion Play marks the oldest known ritual drama. We've talked about this before. And I think your first chapter, they mentioned the Abydos Passion Play. And we talked about it when we covered the review of your midterm. This is a historical play that it took place in Egypt, and basically archaeologists and historians translated it. It's not like the Passion of Jesus or the other German one I can't say. They didn't just do it every year. This is more of like it was a single play, and it was about the story of Osiris's murder and resurrection by the help of his son Horus and his wife Isis. And because he was killed, he was torn apart, and then he was somehow put back together and made alive again. So it's a death and a rebirth story. So any of these passion plays we're talking about are somehow kind of either have to do with Jesus or have to do with the death and rebirth. So, and it reminded them of Jesus's death and resurrection, which is why they call it the Abadu's Passion Play. Okay, Taizie is a living traditional theater carried out by the Shiite Muslims in Iran. This one's very different and very special because it reenacts the martyrdom of early Muslim leader Hussein and his sons and companions. And the Passion Play is part of the tradition, spiritually inflected reenactment of the death of an important religious leader. Well, Shiites do not believe that in theater per se. They believe that part of their teaching is that mimicry is wrong. Okay, so it's considered virtually the only theater form indigenous to Islamic culture because of their strong taboos against the creation of various kind of representations. Only Allah is supposed to create life. So mimicry is suspect in Islamic communities. The performers, though, they distance themselves from the audience by holding the script when they act. To show the audience, I am not mimicking anything, I'm just reading to you and acting, okay? This is not me pretending to be something I'm not, because only God can do that. I am just reading to you and acting out at the same time. But both professionals and amateurs, they're all male, okay? Shiite Muslims, they're all male, no women can perform in these. And it's a multi-day event. And the centerpiece play depicts the murder of Hussein. It's almost always played on the same date every year. The 10th of Muharram. I don't know. That's the day in history on which the event occurred, but I'm not sure what the 10th of Muharram is. I'm not sure what month that means in Islam. So there's that. Other theaters, we talked about the Natya Sastra, which had all of the Sanskrit plays and all the details on all of the how theater is supposed to be and that kind of thing in Sanskrit. And Sanskrit, again, it was performed indoors with a roof building, which is a really big deal for when it happened because nobody else was doing that. They also had carved wooden elephants, tigers, and snakes adorned on the pillars and the ceilings. And they had 2 doors on stage that went to your dressing area behind. And the performers were all from priestly castes and trained from early childhood. So even here where we have this kind of theater that is, you know, a little bit more, there's a more historical context to it. Only people, remember there was the caste society in India, okay? And only if you were born from this caste could you even be considered to do this, to perform this kind of play. It died out around the 10th century because of the Muslim invasion. So, but again, we still see it today because we're remembering what we did before. All of the forms of the Natya Sastra at their starting point, and all forms use the Natya Sastra. So all the forms of Sanskrit theater, they're all dance dramas, and they all start with that because it looks at the rules. They look at the rules of the theater and they follow the rules. And a lot of them are, they're from epics. They're from, I told you before, they're Ramayana and Mahabharata. Okay, so they all have dance drama in them. Whoever's doing those, there's more information on these slides, so you might want to look at some of these slides if you're doing that part for your PowerPoint stuff. This is just a picture of them doing the mudra hand gestures, which are very important for Indian dance. I had a student that gave a speech in one of my classes, and the speech was about the finger placements that they did in Indian dance. And they trained for years and years to, you know, do this with their fingers or whatever. And however, you'll notice, however they hold their fingers, it all means something different. And I'm talking, you know, just a minor movement can mean something completely different. So it's really interesting. The finger in their dancing is, they train for years and years and years to do the fingers right. Okay, we talked about Chinese opera. The first one was the Zaju, And it was more comedic music dance drama. And it had acrobatics and it had clowning in it. And because it was the first one, it was kind of for everyone. It had 4 acts and climaxes. And the tightening of the structure made it more aristocratic. And a more poetic kind came out known as kung fu, which originated from the town of Hushnan in the 16th century. And then the other form I talked about was the clapper opera, which is characterized by the furious rhythmic beating and drum steps and stuff. Okay, then we had all these other kinds of opera. The most famous now is the one somebody's going to be doing a thing on the Peking opera, it's Beijing opera. It's also the Jingju. It's the theater of the capital because Beijing was the capital at the time. So this particular one is called the theater of the capital, and it's really kind of done for the court. This young man came for one of the emperor's 80th birthday. A group of actors from the mountains of Anhui came and amazed the courts with their innovative acrobatic styles. And so the court embraced them and said, this is our kinds of theater. The main skills are singing, speech, movement, and martial arts. The costumes are really specific. The colors and the makeup show what the different people are. So red means bravery and loyalty. Green are violent or impulsive characters. And these are some of the faces. These are some of the masks that they might use or the paint that they might use on their faces to show each of these are different characters, and people who are watching them would know what these characters are. Okay, Chinese opera, most of it's singing, a lot of it falsetto, probably because there are men there and they have to sing in the falsetto voice if they want to sound like women. Japan, we talked about the No theater and all the different styles. The Shiite, let's see. Yes, the main actor is a masked person called the Shiite. Okay, the Waki, there's a side actor, and the nose language is really poetic. This is a picture of the theater again, has the roof inside, okay, and the playing area and a long walkway and an old pine tree that's painted on the back wall of the stage. It's always on every stage. And the costumes are large and showy, on stage musicians and chorus. Okay, talked about kabuki. I got 3 minutes. Talked about kabuki. Izumu Okuni. This is the person. Izumu Okuni is the woman who started kabuki theater in the dry riverbed. And it was very showy, very dramatic style, became really popular. And one of the subgenres is called the overnight pickle play. Okay, and it drew inspiration from some scandal about pickles. It's also a hereditary vocation. Again, families do this. They teach their children and they grow up learning how to do it. And their major works are usually history plays or domestic plays. And then the bunraku, I wish they had a picture of the bunraku, but I hope to bring one. It's this huge puppet, at least has some really good pictures. And they practice moving different limbs and stuff. And then we talked about the Rabanal Aki dance of Guatemala, which is highly ritualized mass dance, and the griot tradition of music, praise singing, and history keeping in West Africa. Okay, and there's commedia dell'arte, there's ballet, there's opera, there's a whole lot of different traditional kinds of things. The pageants, so when we go to the Battle of Flowers Parade, all right, that's a pageant, okay, where we have wagons that come. And this is the Ramona Bowl Outdoor Amphitheater in Hemet, California, which is a naturalistic backdrop to the romanticized story of Ramona and Alessandro, performed every April by a large community cast, and even as shown here, horses. Anyone here see Overboard? See Overboard? Okay. I think that's who they say that they are. Ramona, Alessandro. They're calling to each other off the end of the boat, you know, so. We know about the Greek tragedy. Oh, one more important thing. There are people that don't believe that Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare. And Shakespeare was from a place called Stratford upon Avon. And so the people that don't believe that Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare are anti-Stratfordians. Okay, so it's basically, I don't believe that Shakespeare was the one that wrote it. Do I think Shakespeare wrote it all? Yeah, I think I kind of told you my philosophy about that. But he probably wrote some of it. He was leading the group, and he was the manager of the group. So a lot of times people, contributed to it, and we don't have any original writings. The only writings that we have are somebody from about 50 years after he died wrote down the plays. People that were in the plays remembered them. So who knows if they even got it right? Okay. See, golden age of Spanish, their historical theaters. They had Commedia, Molière, had the Comédie Française, and hopefully one of you will tell us a little more about it. Ta-da, that's it.